Welcome to You, Me, Empathy. Thank you for listening. We would like to remind you that this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only, and is not a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Known as just a silly boy with a feely heart. Please consider supporting the show. Check us out on Patreon or simply leave a review on iTunes. Here's your host and creator of the show, Known Wells.
Hello, feely humans. Welcome to You, Me, Empathy. My name is Known Wells, and this is episode 79, where I talk with my friend Liv Pennelle about learning how to be in our bodies. We also explore recovery from the things that bring us pain, food for healing, and developing our sense of worth. There is a trigger warning for this episode. Bulimia, disordered eating, and addiction are covered. So just a fair warning there. Before we get to the episode, though, please leave a review for You, Me, Empathy in iTunes or Google Podcasts. It really helps out the show, and it just takes a couple of minutes. 5 stars is my favorite number of stars. So please do that. That would be great. I love you. Also, what else do I want to say? Follow You, Me, Empathy on Instagram and Twitter at You, Me, Empathy. We also have a wonderful feely human space called the Facebook group for You, Me, Empathy. It's at facebook.com/groups/You, Me, Empathy. And I just wanted to say thank you to those who reached out to me regarding last episode 78, where I poured out my heart and shared all the details about my eating disorder experience. I hope you love it. I hope you really connected with it. And those who reached out and just, were happy that I shared and connected with it. Thank you. Thank you for doing that. Like, it really means the world to me when you folks reach out to me. It's the best. And what else do I want to say? Oh, I did some writing for Mental Health America this past week. And I also shared that on a blog at knownwells.com, so you can go there. It's called A Boy, His Anorexia, and the Heart That Saved His Life. So check that out. I enjoyed writing it, and I hope you enjoy reading it. Okay, let's get to this episode. This is episode 79 on learning how to be in our bodies with Liv Pennelle.
La la la, you, me, empathy, yeah, la la la.
Welcome to You, Me, Empathy, a podcast about exploring the struggles we face in our day-to-day lives as humans trying to get by on this wondrous and overwhelming pale blue dot. The intent of You, Me, Empathy is to talk openly, without judgment, about our neuroses, our mental illnesses, our shared anxieties and worries, to create a dialogue that is vulnerable and deeply human and empathetic, and to share that dialogue with others to inspire emotional and cognitive collaboration and insight, so we can, hand in hand, break down the stigma that make us feel shame and guilt for struggling, for feeling our feelings, for being human. You, Me, Empathy is a safe, friendly space designed to inspire the beauty in each of us. Today, I am thrilled to venture out into the abundant empathy waters with writer, food and mood ponderer, and Liv's Recovery Kitchen creator, Liv Pennelle. Hello, Liv.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. I'm excited to have you. You are someone who was connected to me by a previous guest of the show, Callie Lux.
Yes.
Yeah. And listeners, if you haven't listened to that episode, as of this recording, it's not out yet, but it will be out by the time this episode comes out. So go listen to Callie's episode. We talked about addiction and recovery and all sorts of good stuff there. So Liv, we always kick off the show with just an emotional check-in. How are you
I
feeling
like
today?
that. I'm feeling good, pretty grounded. My apartment overlooks Mount Tabor, and it's all kind of misty. And I've been spending a good amount of time sitting and looking at it. I'm looking at it now, so I'm feeling pretty good. Yeah.
Lovely. And you're in the Oregon area, right?
Yes.
Nice.
Despite my accent. Yeah.
So where are you from originally?
Originally, New York.
Okay.
I was born there, and at the age of 3, I'm a twin. We moved, I think 3 or 4, we moved to England, where my mum is from, and then grew up in England until I was 37. And then I decided to move to Portland in Oregon, where I've been, this will be my 3rd year.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Yeah, I love that area.
it's beautiful. Really, really beautiful. It's the trees. They're just, wow.
I
Yeah,
love trees.
I do. I think there's something really nurturing about them.
I agree. I find I'm often humbled by nature,
Mm,
and it makes me feel small in a good way,
yeah,
and also connected, right? And I think that's where you're
yeah,
coming from with the nurturing.
yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
think you're right. Yeah,
I think humans need more of that
absolutely.
interaction with nature.
Yeah, I think we just get so wrapped up in technology and avoiding ourselves that we don't realize where we are in the world or the beauty around us.
Yeah, and there's so much just noise in the other place, not in
Yeah,
there's so much noise that drowns out the sort of inner talk and inner looking that we need.
yeah, yeah, there really is.
Yeah.
I feel like when we're out of nature and in the rat race we were talking about and technology, we kind of lose consciousness, and the nature has the ability to kind of wake us up.
Yeah, I agree. I agree completely.
Yeah. How are you?
Thanks for asking. I'm doing pretty well. A couple of things I wanted to mention. I was talking. So one of the joys of this recent fence project, the listeners knows about this fence project. My fence blew down, and I've had to rebuild the fence. And one of the sort of silver lining, sort of unforeseen joys that came out of this experience is meeting one of my neighbors who I hadn't met, a sweet old man named Shahid, and we've been working on it together. Past couple of weeks, him and I, and yesterday, in getting the last materials for the fence, we were talking about the this idea that some guy like honked at him driving because he didn't go fast enough when the light turned green, and Shahid was saying something along the lines of like, what the heck, man, like take a chill pill or something.
Yeah.
And we were kind of laughing about it, and I said, one of the things, it reminded me of a previous guest's episode, Janet Fouts, where she said when she interacts with anyone in life, the sort of mantra that she has going on in her head is, may you be safe, may you be happy. And I was reminded of that yesterday because the reality is that we don't know what's going on with people. And I think like you hear like, you don't know the journey that they're taking. They're maybe on the surface perceived as asshole sort of action is because they've had a shitty morning and maybe their dog died or they're struggling with depression or what have you. And I think that could be a quaint statement, an idea, and it has been sort of Instagramified in a way, but I do think it at the core of it is very deeply human and important to remember that we need to express kindness, and we need to be patient with our fellow humans, because the truth is we don't know. We don't know what's going on. And we always bring stuff to experiences. We bring our own preconceived notions and biases and our own anger and frustration and expectations of how a certain experience will go. But we need to shed that, because the sooner we shed that, or better sort of separate that from the pure experience, the sooner we do that, the better we can connect and have a little kindness and empathy.
Yeah. I had I run a group with my friend Tiffany in Portland, the She Recovers local social meetup group, and we had an author and a therapist from Hawaii fly in to talk about his book, Addicted to the Monkey Mind. And, you know, the premise behind the book is that if you break through certain thinking patterns that, you know, and practice a more observing, you know, less judgmental perspective, then you're able to break down what these inherent beliefs are that are causing the friction that we're talking about, you know, our faulty wiring that leads us to believe that ultimately, in some capacity, we're not worthy, or we're stupid, or whatever, that causes these external situations. And it was so helpful to see him work through that live in a group, you know, because we just don't spend enough time thinking what's behind someone's aggressive behavior. Mm-hmm. You know, what are they hurting about? And how can I be more compassionate and empathize with that?
Yeah. The why. Yeah, no, that's really interesting. Another sort of anecdote to this is my boss, who's just a sweet guy. He has a son who recently had experience. His son, who's 7 or 8, has been making YouTube videos and is really kind of getting into it, and it's one of his joys. And his son made a video, and one of the comments on that video was "kill yourself." And his son's 7, 8 years old, you know, and my boss was talking to his son about this experience, and he said, you know what, I was confused by it, but he said, hurt people hurt people.
Yeah.
You know, and I was just true. Wow, blown away by that little nugget of wisdom from a 7-year-old. And it's so true.
It's never about us.
No, it's not. It really isn't.
No.
Yeah, it's like that just filled my heart and gave me hope for humanity.
Yeah, and I think if we take a moment to slow down, we can see that. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, you know, we're working too hard, too fast, too much, and we don't have the time or the capacity to slow down, or, you know, and we don't have the tools either. Hopefully more people will learn some of these tools.
Yeah, we don't have the tools, and we don't have the framework yet. You know, we were talking about before we got started the rat race and this cultural expectation to just work until you die, and like, where's the balance and mental health and joy in that?
Yeah.
You know, so how do we develop the tools if we don't have the framework to know like how those tools will interact with that framework?
Yeah. Or sometimes maybe not even the awareness that we need a framework and tools.
Yeah.
You know, we're so tightly wound up, and we're living, you know, I've done a lot of work this past 2 years around how illness manifests, mental illness manifests in the body. And, you know, we don't realize that many of our conditions are actually due to repressed emotion or mental illness in some capacity. But we go about our lives just medicating, you know, that's the answer.
It's scary.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying don't take medication. Please don't think that. You know, but actually dig a little deeper. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, it is a running theme on this podcast, but we do have to look inward.
Yeah.
But it's scary. Like, how have you, maybe this will be the question leading into like your story. How have you gotten there? How have you been able to dig a little deeper?
I don't think I'll ever be there, but
That's a good point.
yeah, I know exactly what you're asking though. I, I I think typically I have had to get to a place where we say seesaw, but I think Americans say what do they say for the playground?
I mean, are
Do
you
you say
talking about?
seesaw?
I say seesaw. Yeah,
Okay, good. So
yeah,
we have to get to the place where, the equilibrium shifts, and the pain of remaining the same is too great and not as much as the pain of change or the perceived pain of change. I think that's the biggest barrier. Um, so yeah, I mean, for me, I have suffered with depression and anxiety my entire life. From my earliest memories, I don't remember a large portion of my childhood, and I, I self-medicated with alcohol and drugs, and I tried to stop, and I just got to this place where I just couldn't continue as I was, and no matter how many times other people had tried to help, it just didn't. Nothing clicked. I had to inherently, in the very core of my being, want that change and the scales to shift, and that was really what has precipitated all of my change in life in every area. It's been a series of developments and going deeper. When I remember when I first got sober, and and I initially did so in AA, and I'm no longer in that program, but I was told that the first 10 years are the hardest, and I was so offended by that comment. It's like, how does that give anybody hope? And now I see that they were just being blunt about a reality that actually living without anesthesia is incredibly difficult, and it takes years to truly get to the heart of some of the things that we have to deal with. So that's why I do a lot of the work that I do, because I want to be, I'm passionate about getting to people before they got to the stage that I got to. I don't think that we need to get to full-blown substance use disorder and in crisis to start to make some changes, because we just don't need to get there.
right.
There's so much to live for, and the very thing that you're looking to soothe, whatever, is the very thing that's taking you away from the ability to soothe it.
Right. When did you start abusing alcohol and drugs?
I started using alcohol and drugs around the age of 12 or 13, and pretty much drank outside of the normal parameters of what we consider normal drinking my whole life. So I blacked out from a very young age. And once I realized that this made me feel better, I now see what I was doing was soothing my nervous system because I have PTSD, and I was trying to improve the chemistry of my brain because I was severely depressed and anxious. And once I discovered that, I was hooked until the age of 32, and miraculously, obtained a degree and worked, moved out of home, still had some semblance of, from the outside, what appeared like a regular life, but internally I was destroyed the entire time. I had zero sense of self.
Yeah.
I was having this discussion with somebody on Facebook the other day about about how people in recovery can pick and choose what works for them, and asserting that people have a high level of self-efficacy and autonomy. And for me, when I walked into the rooms, of AA and got sober, I was 32 years old. I might have a degree and a job. In fact, at that time, I'd quit my job. But I might have done what usually people do at that age. But I had zero sense of self. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know how to cope with life, clearly. Like, I hadn't developed an identity. I didn't know how to parent myself. I didn't know how to make decisions. Knowing what I know now and looking back, I think I was a child.
Yeah.
When they say you're the emotional age you were when you stop, that when you started. And, I think a lot of that is true. I didn't want to accept that, but it was true. I didn't, I would have to ask people, what do I do about this? And how do I make this decision? And everything was so steeped in wanting to please others and do the right thing, and just utter confusion. It was, my God, I would never want to go back there.
You're a people pleaser?
I was, yeah.
Where do you think that comes from?
I think it comes from, part of the addiction or PTSD or, whatever. Like my background is that leaving America and leaving my father at age 3 was the point at which my psyche split. I, from that point, have had huge issues with abandonment, and maybe have connected in my mind that in order to get someone to stay, I have to please them. So it's taken a long time through therapy to sort of break that down and realize that I have to please myself and take care of myself. And sometimes that means people might be unhappy, and that's their problem, not mine.
Absolutely. And why did you leave your father?
Because he had alcohol use disorder, still has alcohol use disorder. And, he'll be 80 this year. And so for our safety, my mum had to move us back to England.
Was he violent, abusive?
Yeah, he was violent and abusive, and just not a very nice person. But, to be fair to him, he didn't have the skills given to him. That's what he learned. That's how he learned to be from his father.
Right. Have you developed that kindness toward him or empathy toward him through therapy?
Yes, and through time.
Yeah.
I still go through periods of anger, and, obviously the hurt is underneath the anger. It's really difficult. It's like a long period of grieving, but he has, deep-rooted psychological disorders that makes it he's incapable of empathy. He's unable to gain any insight into his behavior and change. So in order for me to be safe and protect myself and my heart, I can't have a relationship with him, which is really sad. But it's, I have a great stepfather in England who cares for me deeply and has reared me since I was about 10 years old. It's very sad, but that's how it is.
Yeah, I relate to that. I don't have a relationship with my father either. For similar reasons. He was abusive and just not a nice man. And I eventually had to, put those boundaries up. It is sad in a way, but I think I've come to peace with it. knowing
Mhm.
that I've tried, in the past. My
Yeah.
dog's making noise in the background.
I'm just waiting for mine, actually. I think she's finally resigned herself to the fact that she's staying in her crate for the next hour.
But yeah, just trying and having my heart broken and knowing that was not good for me and not good for my own mental health. And I had to cut ties,
I think that's it. He broke my heart. That's
Yeah.
exactly it. Every time I saw him, it just reopened that wound.
Yep.
And I think there's a part of me that I recently wrote about this actually. That how I've broken up with my narcissistic father, and it's so incredibly hard because the way that I am now, it's as if he's no longer alive, but he is. And for me, that discrepancy is really challenging,
Right.
But yeah, I can't. I've tried, and I see, a part of me. There's still that child part of me that says, "Come on, he must be able to get through to him in some way." But like you, I've tried, and I'm done trying. I turn 40 this year. I'm done. I'm done doing things that no longer serve me. Yeah.
And how was living with your mom as a single mom, or did she marry pretty quickly?
No, she was a single mom for until we were 10. It was challenging, She coped with alcohol too, and I mean, having just got a puppy over the past 3 months, I now see some minuscule insight into what it must have been like to have children on your own.
Yeah.
She had twins and she was dealing with the breakup of a marriage and went out to work full time. So she wasn't emotionally available and she didn't have the skills to cope. So I didn't, I got everything, all of my physical needs met, but not my emotional needs. So I just began numbing out from a really young age. I would just daydream or eat. My problems with food started in, I must have been like 6 or 7. And yeah, I just like totally checked out. I wasn't able to make as many friends at school as my twin brother. He has a very different experience to me.
Is that hard for you?
Yeah. Yeah, because in some way it has a tendency to invalidate my experience, but through therapy I've learned that that's nonsense.
Right. But I so relate to that feeling though, that it does.
Right? Like, what's wrong with you? I was fine. It's like, well, you might have had, my family have not been through the level of therapy that I have. And my God, I think there's a whole more world of therapy that I need. But, they are not able to see boundaries or allowing someone to have their experience and not trying to save them from that experience or to tell them that whatever their experience isn't right. So, I've been dismissed a lot of my life. I come from a big family. I'm a twin. I lost a brother. I had 3 stepbrothers too. So, it's easy to rear boys. And I was a complex child. I had suffered, and I think it's only really become clear over the past few years that my PTSD began when we left America. And I've had it my entire life, but it was only when I moved to Portland that it became apparent. I thought that highly dysregulated state was normal. So it's actually quite remarkable that even with untreated complex PTSD that I've stayed in recovery for nearly 7 years.
That is.
Yeah. I mean, I have coped in other ways. Food rears its ugly head, and relationships too have been probably like the biggest area of growth, because it always goes back to our familial relationships or our paternal ones. So yeah, it's been really hard. They try to understand, but they don't. And when you have a family of high achieving people like doctors, and people who work in tech, it's really hard to have someone that's struggling, and is now setting boundaries. Like, I don't want to talk about certain things. I won't talk about my health. I won't talk about my weight. And that's been very hard for people to accept, because it's always been a standing agenda item. Family dynamics are fascinating to me.
Why was it a standing agenda item?
I think because that might be how some other people define worth.
Right.
Weight is so intrinsically linked, historically. It's the messages that we're given, right, to our worth.
Yeah.
So there's this assumption that I can't possibly be happy because my BMI is in the obese category. I mean, we both know that BMI is nonsense, but
it is.
So rejecting that culture has been really hard, because my family come from Western medicine background. So I'm consistently told that a lot of the problems I have with my health are weight related, when that's just not true. They're PTSD related. They're mental illness related. And there are physiological problems in my body that have caused huge fatigue, like chronic fatigue, my entire life. So it's been really difficult for my body to get moving and to regulate weight. And yeah, it's such a complex topic.
It really is. There's so much to unpack. I do want to explore a little bit of your early relationship to food and how that manifested just in your day to day and eating at home and if you had any responses from friends or family members about that relationship to food.
I think I began when I realized, I think it was in our second house in England, and some friends had come over to play. And God, my memories are really so vague, but I do remember the things that caused me harm, some of them. And I remember them suggesting that we have supper snacks. And I was like, what? You eat outside of meal times? What? And we had like some biscuits or something, or, cookies, that you say here.
Yeah.
And that kind of blew my mind. And then, my mum had never really given us candy. We've never really had candy or chocolate or anything like that, which is what infuriates me with a lot of my dental health this last year. But that's a whole episode in itself. And so having that and then feeling the reaction that, happened in my body in the same way as alcohol. In fact, I think that was the first time I realized I can change how I feel with a substance. So at that point, I started sneaking around with food at home. And, in our early days, we were quite poor. So we didn't really have an awful lot of food. So I would do things like fry mushrooms in butter and, or have bread and butter and take time off school and eat. It was secretive, it was bingy, it was hiding from others. But I maintained you couldn't really see any issue with me. I have always been a relatively healthy, reasonable weight, right? So that, and then alcohol took over and drugs. So, I took a lot of speed in my early teens, so I drastically lost my appetite and a lot of weight. And, it was when I lost all that weight that I suddenly started garnering the attention of of the opposite sex.
Mm.
And, you know, and then
What a
that,
mind fuck that is.
right?
Yeah.
And that's what I'd been shown, you know, through parenting,
Right.
is you lose weight and there's a man at the end of it.
Ugh.
You know, I would see my mum go on extreme 500 calorie a day diets, and at the end she would be in a relationship. Oh, that may not be the reality, but that's what my mind remembered.
Sure.
So to me, that I made that connection early on, that if I was thin, I'd have a relationship. And and it continued in that way, and for much of my 20s, and then in my late 20s, I was struggling so much with the alcohol and drugs that I couldn't cope with the amount that I was drinking, that I would start to eat a lot in the evenings, and I put on like 100 pounds really quickly. I would eat cake. Binge eating disorder just went nuts. And then I was diagnosed with clinical depression and advised to stop drinking, which I did. And so the food got even worse. And then discovered that I could drink and take these really intense antidepressants, it just got even worse than it ever was. So when I got into recovery, I was over 300 pounds, and just miserable. And my binge eating continued. That's the thing. When I was drinking, I would throw up. So it was definitely bulimic.
Okay.
I would say that bulimia and anorexia have gone, they sort of flip around all throughout my life. It's just that when I got sober, I was like, well, I shouldn't throw up anymore, but I was still binging. So and now I know, having done the research and writing about the topic, that what had happened is that obviously my brain chemistry was completely off. My nervous system was completely off, given the mental health conditions that I have. So I felt so horrendous that the only thing that would give me any temporary relief was high carbohydrate, high reward foods. So that continued for probably the first 2 years of my recovery. So I would be literally sitting in a church basement thinking, is this what recovery is about? Planning what I was going to buy from the store on the way home, and even sometimes leaving early so I could pick up the food. It would have the same drug-like excitement attached to it, and then hated myself afterwards. And it was just this perpetual cycle of binging and shame, and gosh, it was horrendous. And I couldn't understand why I wasn't the weight that I was when I took drugs. And it's like, well, because you're not taking drugs, love.
Mm-hmm.
And you're eating a lot. So I worked with a woman who helped me to make my life bigger than food, and helped me to retrain my brain with the foods that I was eating, so that I started to find reward from connecting with others and from eating nutritious food. And that helped. I lost 70 pounds. Not that it's about the weight, but that helped, like the pain in my body. And, I felt significantly better. And then that became my new norm. But it's only in being where I am now that I realized that still wasn't the norm. I still don't think I am at the norm. I don't think there's any homeostasis in my body still.
What does that mean to you?
That means no pain, no inflammation, where I have a sustained period of time where I'm not suffering with my body. When I moved to America, it felt like I was jumping out of a plane every single day. And then I realized after a while that should have stopped by now. And I was dealing with this chronic fatigue, and I finally went to see a naturopath. The first thing I did actually was to register with a primary care provider, who, the first thing that she did, we need to put you on a medication that's going to reduce your weight. and she put me on 2 different medications, and she put me on Wellbutrin, and she put me on metformin. I did lose weight. Wellbutrin is an incredible drug for my depression, but my body is intolerant to it, and it caused problems with my heart. It's not nuts. And, this Western, of course, your weight is the problem attitude just infuriated me. And I went to see a naturopath, and she tested my adrenal function, and that became my unraveling of the PTSD because I have huge dysfunction in my HPA axis, which, is it's just so dysfunctional. My body has been in fight or flight my entire life. And that made me go and see, well, it didn't make me do anything, but I decided I need to understand why, and started working with a therapist together with the naturopath, and she diagnosed complex PTSD. And together it's been, they've been incredible in helping me to begin to heal. But I'm still only 2 years into that process, so it's going to take a long time.
Yeah, wow. I mean, it sounds, personally, like my heart just goes out to you. It sounds a lot of trauma to hold in your body. Yeah.
A huge amount. Have you heard of the ACEs study?
Of course. Yeah, I read The Body Keeps the Score.
Yeah. And there's another book called Childhood Disrupted. Have you read that?
I have not.
That has got to be the most powerful book I've ever read.
Okay, great.
And she breaks down the ACEs study in a non-clinical way. Because I'd read Gabor Mate's book, When the Body Says No.
Uh-huh.
And, which had touched on the ACEs study, which I'd never heard of before. And I worked through it with my therapist, and my score was 9 out of 10. So by all counts, I've got a 90% increased risk of chronic illness. The fact that I'm in recovery is a miracle. And, functioning is really, it's bizarre. I have got markers in my body of an autoimmune condition. We're still trying to figure out what it is, but we're trying to do everything to reduce, to turn those markers off, because there's nothing evident right now, just that there's huge inflammation and there is something going on.
So that's interesting to me. What you just said about how it's a miracle. You wrote something recently. You wrote something recently about, sort of being quote unquote broken, to like reframing yourself to maybe being something other than that.
Yeah.
How has that been, accepting that? Because my perspective is that it's a sign of your resilience and sort of your heart and all this beauty that lies within you. Like how have you been able to maybe try to focus on the more sort of positive reframe of that?
Well, that's a really interesting question, and I will be answering that in my podcast, which is going to be called "We Are Not Broken."
Love it.
And yeah, and I started the journey of realizing that I'm not broken when I left AA, because I believe, the first thing I want to say is if AA works for you, that's amazing, and I respect that. For me, it worked, to help me on my journey of healing. But for someone with my conditions, considering myself defective in some way is not helpful to my regaining my autonomy, nor is the model of considering myself powerless. I was the one that did the work that got me sober. And, leaving was a huge part of me regaining that autonomy and thinking, I am done doing an audit assassination of my defects every day.
Right.
I don't want to look at these negative aspects of my life, and my self-esteem is still in the gutter, and I have no sense of worth. And or self, I'm still speaking to sponsors to make decisions about my life. I'm a 37-year-old woman, for God's sake. And it was that these had initially been seeds of doubt when I first started in the program, and they just grew. The voices grew so loud that I could no longer ignore them. When I left, it has been a long process. It's been, hang on, it will be 2 years in March that I left. Hang on, 17, 18, 19. No, hang on, what year is it? It's 2019.
It's 2019.
Oh my God, who am I?
We're in the future. It's 2073.
I left, right? It's been a couple of years since I've left, and I have never felt more resilient, more powerful, more whole, in spite of the cracks that I have within me, in my entire life.
That's amazing.
I know that those, I suffer with life. That's my condition. And I've been dealt a few rotten cards. But, I spent my entire life thinking, what's my thing? My brothers are doctors. My other brother works in tech and he's living the dream in California. And what's my thing? I'm working, in a desk job and I hate it. And then when I got into recovery and I started writing, I was like, this is my thing. That pain that I've been through has been worth it, because this allows me to connect with the human race, because we're all recovering from something. We're all, we've all got some wound in some way.
Yeah. I love that so much. So recently I've been thinking about, and I'm wondering if you can speak to this. I've been thinking about just our identity in our mental illness. I also have clinical depression, anxiety. I would consider myself in recovery from anorexia, and they all have contributed to my identity, right? And I hold on to them with dear life, because they have allowed me to see myself and connect in a way with others and embrace vulnerability in a way that has been such a beautiful journey for me.
Yeah.
How do you relate to your dark passenger, or whatever you want to call it?
Yeah. That has enabled, that's the stepping stone, right? That's the stepping stone for me to stand into who I am and discover who I am. Those conditions made me. That pain that I walked through enabled me to live my best life. And, they don't define me. They used to, and that's why I don't believe in the hi, I'm Liv, I'm an alcoholic. I mean, I no longer believe in using those terms because they've been found to be stigmatizing. But, I don't want to define myself by a person I was 7 years ago. No thanks.
Yeah.
Nobody says, hi, I'm Liv, I've got cancer, or I'm diabetic. Why is this the only condition that we do say that with? I think it keeps us small. I'm not saying I don't identify with it, and I don't say that that's part of me, and I'm not open about it. I write about it on a daily basis. I embrace it. I've made it my mission in life to help people change their perspective about how we view addiction, and break down some of these barriers. Less than 10% of people in America that get treatment, less than 10% of the millions that have it. And it's because of stigma is a huge barrier.
Yeah.
So my talking about it and talking about it in an empowered way might help more people step forward and say, hey, I think you're right. And I've had hundreds of people contact me. I've set up a group for people who want to leave 12-step fellowships so that they have a safe space to voice their concerns and feel connected and decide what they need to do next. I speak to people all the time who send me messages and say, thank you for sharing, this little piece of your journey, because I have related to it. But, particularly around the PTSD, I had someone from London contact me last week and say, it all makes sense. Now I read your article. And yeah.
How does that make you feel?
Worthy, like I'm on the right path. Being a writer is an incredibly lonely path, particularly when you moved to a place where you don't know anyone and you had to essentially start your life again. I can spend all day on my own, so behind my computer. So a lot of my articles, I don't get trolls, although I no longer read the comments on articles on the Fix. But I rarely get feedback, and I think it's only starting to pay off. I think since I moved to America, we're talking about 700 articles that I've written in the past few years. So that, my voice is getting out there, and more people are contacting me and saying, how do I'm experiencing this. Is it normal? And that allows me to then go and say, sure, it is. This has been my experience, and why don't I write an article about it? So it's amazing. Because I haven't had much feedback before then, I was thinking, am I doing the right thing? Because I'm pretty burnt out, and I'm not earning as much as people that work in really incredible jobs. And is this what have I done? So when I get that feedback, it makes my day. It makes my week. To know that I've touched someone somewhere in the world that's suffering.
That's so nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is the best feeling in the world. I get, I get a bit in my head. I start to question myself. I sort of lean on the self-hatred, and I go like, no one wants this. What am I doing? I'm not worthy. I don't.
Yeah.
Why would people listen to me? I'm not a psychologist. Like.
Yeah.
But then I get a response like, you've, allowed me to see myself in this way, and I've connected with this guest, and it's just like my heart is full, and I'm reminded of why I do it.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
Yeah, it's the best. What does recovery mean to you? Like, are you in recovery? Do you use that language?
I do. So if someone was to say, are you an alcoholic or an addict, I say, well, first of all, we don't use those terms anymore. And second, I think people are sick of me saying that, but I will continue to. And I corrected my dentist the other day.
That's good.
It's great.
Language is important, especially in this stuff.
Yeah. And I know some incredible recovery scientists who have proven this stigma to be true.
Yeah.
And, even to the point where we can say it affects people's quality of treatment. So, I'm sorry, I totally went on one then. What was your question?
That's all right. I said, what does recovery mean to you?
Yeah. So I identify as a person in recovery, which means I am, I guess, recovering from the things that cause me pain. Recovering from my childhood. I'm recovering from complex PTSD, adrenal fatigue, substance use disorder, codependency, an inability to stop working.
You won the jackpot, Liv.
I did, didn't I? Oh, you know what we should do?
Yeah. Oh, yay! No other context needed.
So yeah, it's a really interesting question. I guess it means I am committed to improving my ability to relate to myself and to be true to myself and to honor myself. I did some intention settings this year. I don't necessarily believe in goal setting, but a friend and I, who I'm going to start the podcast with, we went out to the Oregon coast. and we set some intentions for the year. It was so magical. And my therapist tasked with me with writing intentions for several areas of my life. So relational, financial, work related, personal. And I follow this artist, Tammy Salas, who I adore. She does the most creative paintings every day that you can watch on Instagram, and it just makes art so much more accessible as a tool for any kind of recovery. And so we looked at her videos and we saw some of the different ways that she was using watercolors, and I painted all of these pages in my art journal and wrote all of these intentions, and then came back to my therapist and I was like, I did all of this and it was great and I loved it, but it all comes back to one thing, which is honor. I have a new one that I've just printed on one piece of paper, and it says, I will cultivate my true nature and give rise to words of action from a place of honor, attunement, and innate wisdom. And I think that's it. I have to put everything through this. Is this relationship going to honor who I am? How does it feel in my body? My friend Tiffany says all the time, how do I feel? What do I need?
Yeah.
And I don't think we answer that.
It's hard to answer that.
Isn't it?
It is. Do you ever feel persuaded or dip into comparing what your recovery is to like other recovery?
Yes. Maybe not necessarily recovery, but more. No, I do. But I definitely compare myself to other writers and journalists.
Sure.
But yeah, sometimes I'll look at someone's recovery on Facebook, which is no real representation of anything. But I'll be like, oh God, they're 3 years sober and their life looks amazing. Like, how did they recover so quickly?
Yeah.
But I realize, obviously that's not a true representation. And also, sometimes people don't have other issues going on. I do believe that in the vast majority of cases, there is some level of trauma that precipitates addiction. But we all have varying co-occurring illnesses. And yeah, I mean, sometimes I'm like, why have you got a handle on food before me? And but we're all unique beings, we all have different processes.
Indeed.
Yeah. And people relate to me because I share what's going on for me right now. And I share it in a very real, genuine way. Writing is a huge part of my process.
Yeah.
When I found out I had PTSD, I was like, oh, well, I'll write about it. Someone else might find that helpful.
Do you, being a writer, and you mentioned, you could be in your apartment all day long, and not see anyone.
Until I got a dog, right?
Right. And I relate to that. I work from home and by myself a lot, but I know that I sometimes, even as an introvert, like need human interaction face to face. Like, can you relate to that at all?
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And that's part of the reason why I got a dog. Because I kept going back to my ex-boyfriend and that wasn't a healthy relationship. And I realized it was out of loneliness.
Yeah.
So I had to sit with myself for a while, and then I got a dog, which is a great level of companionship, and it means that I have to go out every 2 or 3 hours because she's a puppy. So that is breaking up the period of time that I'm isolating. I too am an introvert. I'm an outgoing introvert, so I've got about 2 or 3 hours in me. But I realized the biggest part of why 12-step fellowships are successful is the social element, the fellowship. We need like-minded individuals to be around. It's crucial, I believe, to recovery. No family or partner or friend that hasn't been through this can provide the level of empathy that we need. Collective empathy is perhaps the most powerful tool of recovery, I believe.
Yeah.
But this thing happens when you leave 12-step fellowships. You become the plague. And people are terrified of continuing to be friends with you that still go to 12-step fellowships, because we're conditioned to believe that leaving means you will return to using. And so associating with people like that means a danger to our own personal recovery. So I have lost a lot of friendships that obviously didn't have a solid foundation in the first place. When I was able to see what was really going on is that they were frightened and conditioned to believe that, then it became less personal. But even here, I tried going to different meetings. I tried refuge recovery, which was awesome. But Portland's a difficult place to make friends. I don't know why. I don't know if it's because I am quite outspoken about recovery, and I don't know. I have great friends now, but only a few. And I just decided that, this whole yeah, sure, I'd love to meet up with you. I'll meet you at a meeting is not my idea of social interaction. So I just thought, you know what? I need to make my own social group. I need to use the skills that I have, which is I have a great online community and online presence. Let's use that to my advantage. So I set up a social group for women in recovery in Portland, women identified people, and we had our first meetups. I teamed up with my friend Tiffany, and people started to come. And then She Recovers approached me and said, would you do meetups in Portland? And She Recovers, I align with strongly. They believe that we're all recovering from something. And that includes recovering from cancer, from mental illness, from grief, from whatever. So we merged our group, and now we have monthly or bi-monthly meetings that provide a social space for people in recovery, because that provides the social element that I need. But also, people in recovery rarely know how to have fun. My therapist said to me, what do you do for fun? And all of my answers were work related, were achievement related, and purpose related. I love writing. It was my entire purpose in life. And I couldn't answer what I do for fun. I was like, well, I eat. That's fun. Really? I do enjoy going out to eat, and I enjoy cycling my bike, but what do I do for fun? And it was so difficult. I even did a poll on Facebook, and people were really struggling to answer. There were some that said, I like dancing or going to gigs, but if you're not into that, that I'm too much of an introvert for that. I'm never going to dance in public. So that was out. But yeah, it's been a really interesting journey of exploring things that are fun. So we do that in our group. We we had a talk the other day. We've had someone lead an art journaling class. Next month we're going to make affirmation bracelets, and we've got all sorts of really fun stuff planned.
That's great.
Yeah, it feels so fulfilling as well as fun. So I know that I get my social thing, and my friend Tiffany is just she's just amazing person in my life. It's been really helpful to connect with her. So I have that covered now. We could do with replicating some Tiffany's. I tell her that.
That's so lovely. I'm glad you have that little space.
Yeah, she will be really interesting to have on, actually.
Yeah, I'd love to have her.
She's got a really insight. She's in recovery too. Mm-hmm. A really interesting message. She shows me how to be kind to myself on a level that I didn't even know I needed to practice. I feel like moving to Portland has been kind of coming home to myself. It's the title of my book, my memoir. It's introduced me how to learn how to be in my body. Because I think sometimes, the first few years of recovery, you're very much still in your head. You might do all these things for personal health, like eating well and exercising, but I still don't think we live in our bodies. And being here has enabled me to do that on a whole new level.
So let's talk about that a bit. The body, like in some of your, like kind of the core of, or part of the core of some of your work, from what I've read and what you've said here today is this idea of like body image and really rejecting the cultural artifices around what is healthy, what is not healthy. Like what are you doing to empower like body positivity and body image, healthy body image and these things?
I actually wrote a 30-day daily reflection practice on this and set it up as a product to give to people. Because I'd written so many essays about this that, we need to empower ourselves to stop adhering to what other people find attractive or healthy or acceptable body-wise. Our bodies are, particularly for women, I think, like we're shown that, obviously I can't speak from a male perspective. I just feel like we're constantly there's this book I have and it's called The Body Is Not an Apology. And it's like, yes.
I love that title.
Yeah, like every kind of affirmation or congratulation or praise is like, it is typically related to body image or appearance in some way. So yeah, I keep speaking up about that. That's just horseshit. I tell people that I don't want to talk about my weight and that it's none of their fucking business. Sorry, can I swear?
Of course, all language is valid.
Awesome. And then I started going to a body positive gym in Portland called Bold and Badass.
That's great,
isn't it? And we started working together, and the owner, Emily, is incredible. And we talk a lot about, their whole philosophy is that, women and men come to the gym, people come to the gym to get strong. If they want to lose weight, fine, they can help them do that. But the ultimate goal is to empower people to be strong. And we can do that at any size. Both she and I firmly believe in health at any size. In visiting my doctor, my primary care doctor here, this whole like everything's weight related and and I say, you know what? I at that point I was cycling 100 miles a week. I can run. I can deadlift 235 pounds. Who's to say I'm not healthy? There's nothing in my blood work that says I'm not healthy.
Yeah.
Yes, there might be an autoimmune condition, but that's got nothing to do with my weight. So what's the basis of this discussion? So it's really learning to advocate for myself and say, I reject this diet culture. I own my body. But I have to say, the personal choices, we don't have to, so for example, like if I'm to be completely honest about how I feel in my body right now, I feel a bit heavy and my joints hurt a little bit. I think that's because of some of the things that are going on health-wise. So I would like to lose a few pounds to feel that it's easier to move, but I don't need to tell people that. I don't need to say why it doesn't need to be the focus of my health. It's just the way that I go about being healthy is exercising and eating nutritious food. But I do that because I want the energy and I want to feel strong. So I guess I'm taking weight loss off the table. Like, it's just whatever. Like, I want to be able to move more freely, so I'm going to do more exercise. I've got a dog. We walk a lot. And I'm going to lift some heavy weights because I'm a badass.
Darn right you are.
That's what I did for my 38th birthday, was lift 235 pounds.
That's impressive. I wouldn't even know if I could do something like that because I
Yes,
don't
you
I don't
can.
do gyms.
Yeah, this isn't like a typical gym,
Yeah.
thank God.
Oh yeah. Sounds like
It's
it.
yeah, and they have group workout classes, which really help because gyms are boring.
Well, I just like, I mean, I
Boring.
like, we were talking at the top, like I like to be in nature. I
Yeah,
need trees. I need the sort of wayward wanderer. Like I'm very
yeah.
much a daydreamer in that way. And I also, but I also played like soccer for 30 years.
Oh wow.
And I love the sport of soccer, but I'm also I'm not competitive. I'm sort
Yeah.
of, I cringe at the sort of crush it culture, kill it, that type of
Ugh.
language. I'm very sensitive to people who appear to lead with their ego, and so I
Yeah,
can't set foot in a gym because my sensitivity is that it's full of people like that. Obviously, that's
it
me
is.
blanket washing, but that's just where I'm at.
No, I think that it is heavily dominated by that kind of culture, and then there are the extremes of people that, like some, not all, some people that go to CrossFit, that like, yeah, I puked today, and like it's like a badge of honor. God, I don't want to work out until I puke. How is that healthy? Right?
It's not. I mean, my argument would be it's not.
Right. I think I mean, I know there are I have friends that go to CrossFit and they've had an incredible personal transformation that they wanted. And I think that's really happy that they've achieved I'm really happy they've achieved their goals. And they have a healthy relationship with it. But I see others that, working out's like puke, dude. Like, no. Why are you proud of cutting up your hands and knees and my God, no. But that's their sense of achievement. That's not my
Yeah.
personal objective for my health.
Right. How is your relationship with food today? Obviously part of Liv's Recovery Kitchen is food for healing and even recipes and things like that. How is that part of your journey going?
God, I don't know if this journey will ever end. I think I realized that is a constant learning of how to have a better relationship with my body, and how food fits into that. So with chronic fatigue, there is this overwhelming sense of wanting to eat carbohydrates. So I'm struggling with that. And trying to feed my body in a way that honors it, but also produces, helps it to produce some energy.
Yeah.
I have recently cut out gluten and sugar, not out of a fatty, like an attempt to lose weight or anything like that, but to improve inflammation and reduce inflammation and improve my skin. So yeah, it's great. I drink bone broth. I eat for breakfast, although I had some almond flour pancakes this morning, which were delicious. But on the whole, I eat pretty good. Yeah,
Awesome.
I enjoy food today.
That's good.
Yeah.
And do you have any like favorite recent recipes that you've been enjoying?
I bought an Instant Pot, which has been life-changing.
Okay, so everyone's talking about this thing. It
Oh,
feels
you gotta get one.
very evangelist to me. Tell me why it's so good.
Because you spend less time in the kitchen.
Okay.
And we all love slow cooker food. We all love the convenience of food that doesn't take long. But imagine the slow cooker food that's healthy. Well, I shouldn't say healthy, nutritious, that's made in a fraction of the time. You can even make yogurt in it. Yogurt, as you say.
I like the way you say it better.
Yeah. I came up with an American alter ego. She's called Charlene, and she likes to say things in American.
Charlene.
Yeah. Oh my God, I love your accent. That's what she said. And people say to me, please stop. Tell Charlene to go away. So yeah, it's great. You can make yogurt, you can boil eggs, you can make a whole shredded pork thing in less than an hour.
Wow.
That would typically take like 4 hours or whatever. So I like it because it's convenient. I know that for me to care for myself in the best way, that I need to be on top of making sure that I have food in and making it when I'm not too tired. So it allows me to make food in advance. I can make a big pot of, like a chickpea garbanzo bean curry and freeze half of it. It's great. It's really great. Soups. I should work for Instant Pot. Soup.
Well, what you didn't know is Instant Pot sponsored this podcast.
No.
No, I'm just kidding. Wouldn't that be something?
Right? That would be great.
I don't think they'd be okay with me having never used an Instant Pot.
Well, you could be like the perfect Instant Pot virgin.
There you go.
Life will be transformed by this one magical implement tool. Yeah, it's really great. I am looking forward to making some more recipes. You can make a whole chicken in there as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is
bone
magic.
broth.
This is like Back to the Future 2, where they put the tiny little pizza in there and they just zap it and it's huge.
Yeah. Speaking of, you can get these dog chews called Himalayan dog, like they're Himalayan dog treats or something, and they're like a rawhide alternative.
Okay.
And they're actually made of aged cheese.
Whoa.
But it takes the dog, especially if you've got a dog that likes to chew, it takes forever for them to get through it. Especially when you put it in one of those locks so that they can't get to the very end of it. And there's always a little chunk at the end where you're worried about them swallowing it, which is where the lock comes in. Anyway, when they've got this little bit at the end, you can soak it in water and then you put it in the microwave and it blows up to this huge cheese puff.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So how did you figure out this?
Well, when I went to the pet food store last week, they told me, and I was like, I've been throwing them away. No, so I made it this morning, and my dog thought it was Christmas. And I was sitting there going, wow, that's amazing.
Oh, I see. So your dog is eating the puff, not you.
Oh, no, not me.
Okay.
No, I don't eat dog treats. But I could if I made my own.
I mean, there are a lot of dog treats nowadays that are made with ingredients that I would probably love.
Yeah, a lot of the food that I give her, I is human grade. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, she eats better than me. She's on a high omega diet. You should see her her coat. She looks like velvet.
What kind of dog is it?
She is a border. She's like a lab mix, but I think she might be Ridgeback too, or maybe even like a shepherd in some way, because she stalks when she approaches a dog, so she sort of starts to get down low on her front paws. She's super smart, so she can unlock her crate at 9 months old and squeeze out.
Wow.
Yeah. She's life changing. Getting a dog, I think, has probably been the best thing for my mental health. And moving here. Trees and a dog, amazing.
Animals are empathy machines.
Yeah, they are. Now she's trying to get the bone from the top of her crate into her crate while looking at me with her ears back. Yeah.
Well, we'll start to wrap this up.
Okay.
Let's transition into empathy heroes. This is the part of the show where we mention an empathy hero in our lives. This could be someone we know personally, a friend, a family member, even like an author or a character from a film or a book, So just someone who's just a good empath. And while I give you a moment to think on that, Liv, I am going to read a quote from Dietrich Bonhoeffer that I enjoy. He says, quote, "We must learn to regard people less in the light of what they do or omit to do, and more in the light of what they suffer." Which I just love, and it's very true. You know, you said it yourself early on, Liv. We all have something, right? We all suffer in some way. We all have some trauma and experience that hasn't been great. The cards that we were dealt, you know, some are going to be shitty and some are going to be beautiful joys. But the reality is that we all suffer. And in that suffering, as we know, comes the greatest lessons in life, in my mind, you know. And so I just really like that Bonhoeffer quote.
That's lovely.
Yeah. How about you?
Here's my
Who's your
empathy hero.
this week?
I think it's got to be Tiffany. You know, she just listens and empathizes with me on a level that I've not heard before. You know, so many people empathize, but then project their own experience. And I think that's natural. I think that's how we are designed to be. But not many of us know the art of listening and saying, you know, I hear you, I see you.
Yeah.
You know, I understand. Being acknowledged is with empathy from someone who's walked your path is huge. And you know, maybe the other one would be J.F. Benoist. He's the guy that came to Portland to give the talk and wrote the book. He really intently listens to and empathizes, and then, you know, if you are open to and ask for help, he will help you. I think that's key. Like, I think that really makes someone be a really strong, someone who can practice empathy in a strong way. It is the ability to know that just because you were sharing doesn't necessarily mean you want to hear their opinion. I read a quote the other day from someone who said that, you know, when people are suffering with mental illness and they choose to share how they're feeling or that they're suffering, they may not have the capacity to hear what you have to say about that, but they trust you enough to be able to share their suffering or words to that, you know, effect. And I thought that was incredible. Empaths as a whole is, you know, I'm an empath. There are a lot of empaths in Portland, and it's incredible. We even have empath courses and how to organize your business as an empath, and really kind of highly intuitive people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that.
My pleasure. Thank you.
You're welcome. So, Liv, I'm really excited about this podcast that you're working on with Tiffany, and I want people to listen to it eventually, but I also want people to know where they can read your writing and connect with you online.
livsrecoverykitchen.com. You can find me on Facebook too, and I mostly send a regular newsletter if you sign up on my website. And also, by signing up, you can get free copies of books and tools. So Liv's Recovery Kitchen. But you can also find me in recovery publications or on ravishly.com. I write a lot for The Fix. Yeah, that's where I am.
Lovely. Well, thank you so much for being a guest on Yumi Empathy.
Thank you for having me.
Well, you're very welcome. And to you listeners, as I always say, I'm here, you're here, we're here together on this wayward, overwhelming, awe-inspiring pale blue dot. We have each other. It's Yumi Empathy.